How this high school turned into a fascist regime in 5 days. The third wave experiment. When you think about the Rwanda genocide and the Holocaust, they were both acts of genocide that targeted a specific group of people. People from among their community who were neighbors and even friends just simply turned on each other. In both cases, the victims were dehumanized, persecuted, and ultimately murdered in massive numbers. But how is it possible that we humans, who are perfectly rational and even sensitive at times, just simply switch off that human side? Well, that is a question that the students of Culberry High School in Palo Alto, California asked their history teacher, Ron Jones, in 1967. Ron Jones was a young history teacher who had a very dynamic and unconventional style of teaching. He was an engaging and innovative teacher. He was well known for his use of creative assignments and willingness to question traditional teaching methods. One day, despite his best efforts, Ron Jones struggled to persuade his senior-level contemporary world history class students of the dangers of fascism and Nazi Germany. The class was studying Nazi Germany, and the teacher was interrupted in the middle of a lecture by a question. How could the German people claim ignorance of the slaughter of Jewish people? The student wondered. The teacher didn't know the answer as to how neighbors and even friends of Jewish citizens could claim ignorance of concentration camps and human carnage. The students were obviously uninterested, and he realized that traditional teaching methods were not working. Jones had an unconventional idea to conduct an experiment in which his students would experience the allure of fascism firsthand. He wanted to show them how easily people could be drawn into these dangerous beliefs, as well as the devastating consequences that could result. On Monday, Jones wrote on his chalkboard, "Strength through discipline." He gave a speech about discipline, self-training, control, willpower, and the exchange of physical hardships for superior mental and physical capabilities, the ultimate triumph. Jones told the class to exercise and use a new seating posture. He told them that proper sitting posture helps strengthen concentration. This posture began with feet flat on the floor and hands placed flat across the small of the back to force the spine into a straight alignment. The new attention position was repeated several times. Jones walked up and down the aisles of seated students, pointing out minor flaws and suggesting changes. Jones would dismiss the class, allowing them to leave their desks, and then summon them to attention sitting position abruptly. The class surprisingly learned to move from standing to attention sitting in 15 seconds during speed drills. Jones decided to test the class's tolerance for regimented action. He introduced some new rules in the final 25 minutes of class. Students must be seated in an attentive position in class prior to the late bell. All students must have pencils and paper for note-taking. When asking or answering questions, a student must stand at the side of their desk. The first word given in answering or asking a question should be "Mr. Jones." They practiced short sessions of silent reading. Students who responded slowly were reprimanded and made to repeat their behavior until it was a model of punctuality and respect. To emphasize this, Jones asked for answers in 3 words or less. Students were rewarded for attempting to answer or ask questions. Everyone in the classroom soon began to come up with answers and questions. The level of participation in the class increased from a few who always dominated discussions to the entire class. On Tuesday, the second day of the exercise, Joan entered the classroom to find everyone sitting in silence at the attention position. Most of the students looked straight ahead with a stern face. No sign of smile or thought of even a question. Jones went to the chalkboard and wrote in big letters, "Strength through discipline." Below this, a second law was written, "Strength through community." While the class sat in stern silence, Jones began to lecture about the value of community. Jones had the class recite in unison, "Strength through discipline, strength through community." First, he would have 2 students stand and call back their motto. Then, he would add 2 more until finally the whole class was standing and reciting. The students began to look at each other and sense the power of belonging. As the class was ending, Jones created a class salute. To make the salute, one brought their right hand up toward the right shoulder in a curled position. Jones called it the third wave salute. He made it a rule to salute all class members outside the classroom. On Wednesday, Jones decided to issue membership cards to every student that wanted to continue what he now called the experiment. Not a single student elected to leave the room. He marked 3 of the cards with a red X and informed the recipients that they had a special assignment to report any students not complying with class rules. He then proceeded to talk about the meaning of action. He explained how discipline and community were meaningless without action. To allow students the experience of direct action, Jones gave each individual a specific verbal assignment. It's your task to design a third wave banner. You are responsible for stopping any student that is not a third wave member from entering this room. I want you to remember and be able to recite by tomorrow the name and address of every third wave member, and so on. To conclude the session on direct action, Jones instructed students in a simple procedure for initiating new members. Soon the school was alive with curiosity. It affected everyone. By the end of the day, over 200 students were admitted into the order. By the end of the 3rd day, Jones was exhausted. The balance between role-playing and direct behavior became indistinguishable. Many of the students were completely into being third-wave members. They demanded strict obedience to the rules from other students and bullied those who took the experiment lightly. Others simply sunk into the activity and took self-assigned roles. Late Wednesday afternoon, Jones found a student following him and asked what in the world he was doing. He smiled and announced, "Mr. Jones, I'm your bodyguard." All day long, the boy opened and closed doors for him. He always walked on his right, just smiling and saluting other class members. On Thursday, the experiment was drawing to a conclusion, and Jones was exhausted and worried. Many students had crossed the line, with the third wave having become the center of their existence. Jones decided to end the movement because it was slipping out of control. The students were becoming increasingly involved in the project. Several students had formed their own bodyguard division, which attacked students and a reporter for the school newspaper. Once again, Jones faced the thoughts of closing the experiment or letting it go on its own course. If he stopped the experiment, a great number of students would be left hanging. Things were already getting out of control. By Thursday, the class had swollen in size to over 80 students. The only thing that allowed them all to fit was the enforced discipline of sitting in silence. Jones announced to the class that this movement was part of a larger national movement, and that the next day, a third wave presidential candidate would declare the third wave's existence to the public. He directed students to gather at a rally at noon on Friday to witness the announcement. At 11:50 a.m., all of the students arrived. Jones had persuaded several of his friends to pose as reporters, and he had instructed the students to demonstrate what they had learned in the minutes before the televised address was to begin. He then led them in chanting of "Discipline provides strength, community builds strength, action builds strength." He switched on the TV in the middle of the room. Instead of their leader's televised address, the students were shown an empty channel. After a few minutes, Jones announced that they had been part of a fascist experiment and that they had all willingly created a sense of superiority, much like German citizens had done during the Nazi era. The students sat in shock and disbelief. The experiment was over. Ron Jones' high school history class experiment was a powerful demonstration of how easily people can be drawn into dangerous beliefs and ideologies, and the devastating consequences that can result. Jones was able to transform his students into a tight-knit group with a strong sense of loyalty and obedience by introducing rules and a sense of discipline, as well as a sense of belonging and community. However, the experiment also demonstrated how easily this loyalty and obedience can turn into blind fanaticism. The experiment serves as a warning and a reminder of the dangers of blind obedience, as well as the value of critical thinking, empathy, and individuality.